Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our panel on preparing for a career in cybersecurity. I'm Keith Barros. I'm the Senior Director for Information Security here at Seton University. I've been with the university for 15 years, and I'll be your moderator for today's panel. We have three very distinguished guests and speakers for our panel today, and I will let them all introduce themselves and tell you a little about who they are and the organizations they work for, so you can get a feeling for why it's important to listen as you prepare for your upcoming careers. Let's start with Liz, if you would mind. This is Liz Cowell from Novacoast. So Liz, go ahead.
Thank you, Keith. Yes, as you said, I'm Liz Cowell. I work for Novacoast. I've been in the IT and recruiting industry for about 20 years now. I started with my current company back in 2011. I'm currently the VP of staffing there. When I got started, I did the internal recruiting for Novacoast for everything from entry-level help desk and development interns all the way up to senior-level security engineers. And now my focus is entirely on our staffing division, where we place security professionals around the globe with our clients.
Great. Thank you, Liz. And next we'll have David Berger, who's with SDG Corporation.
Hi. As he mentioned, I'm David Berger. I lead the cybersecurity business at SDG Corporation. So SDG Corporation is what I call a full stack security supplier. So we do the integration work, we do the hard work, as we like to say, we do the hard work after the architect on the board draws a line between two systems and says these systems will talk to each other or these systems will communicate. We do the hard work to make that happen. So we're a company of about 500 globally, with about 100 in the United States and 400 overseas, headquarters in Connecticut. I live right here in New Jersey, which I would imagine is close to many of you. And prior to this, I was CISO at a company called Point72, which is a medium to large size financial company. And I was there for about 10 years, and I was the inaugural CISO and built out the whole program from scratch, hired the team. And prior to that, I was a technologist as opposed to a security expert, and I draw a distinction between those two. I was a technologist prior to that, CTO at Dun & Bradstreet, and then a series of startup companies, which looked followed by the shutdown phase of the startup company. So I did the startup phase and then the shutdown phase of some startup companies. I know this is an educational facility, so I've got a degree in engineering from some time ago, electrical engineering from, I'll just say some time ago, and also speaking of Seton Hall, a master's in management from a local school here, St. Elizabeth, which is not far from Seton Hall.
Thanks, David. And next up we have Brian Schaeffer, who's with OceanFirst Bank. David? Brian, sorry.
Yeah, or Brian. Yeah, Brian Schaeffer from OceanFirst Bank. I'm the inaugural Chief Information Security Officer. OceanFirst Bank is a mid-sized institution, about $12 billion, and we have offices ranging from Boston down to Baltimore, that area, largely New Jersey focused. Like David, I started my career on the technical side, largely from a help desk actually, and worked my way up to CIO roles and CTO roles, and now the CISO role. My undergrad work was in computer science, and then I had my master's work in information security. But been in the industry a while as well, longer than I care to talk about. But happy to be here today to share some experiences with everybody.
Well, thanks, Brian. So we're looking forward to a good discussion on this topic. So why don't we start out with, since a lot of people who are getting into the industry are either students that are not cybersecurity undergraduate majors, they might be cybersecurity, they could be business, psychology or something. And, you're getting your first job in any career, regardless of what it is, as far as when you have no real hands-on experience. And that's a difficult thing to get. Luckily for some students, they can work in a student SOC at the college they're working in or whatever. But for most, you basically have no. So what kind of skills are you looking for beside hands-on experience? Liz, do you want to start?
Sure, sure. So aside from that hands-on experience, one of the things that we look for, I mean, well, you're looking for those soft skills, right? Are they passionate? Are they curious? And are they resourceful? And I think between those three things, regardless of where you're at in your career, those are three skill sets that a lot of people need to be successful in the IT industry.
Yeah, I would say,
Okay.
and just to echo what Liz was saying, are you passionate? One of the assessments, we look at is does this person want the job? That's what, that's kind of,
Yeah.
after the interview, we say, does he actually want the job? Does it make sense for him? Is he, and you can translate that to the word passion or something like that, but just does he actually want to be here? Right. And a lot of times people don't want to be there for whatever reason, right? And for good reasons in many cases. They don't want to be in this company. They don't want to be in the industry. They don't want to be in this location. They don't like the work rules. They don't like you, right? There's all those reasons. But I would say, and ask yourselves, do you want the job, right? Because it's hard to fake that for a full hour during an interview. So that'd be simple.
Yeah, I think, and adding 2 more cents to that. I mean, curiosity and soft skills, hands down, 1 and 2 on my list. But working well with others. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that culture is a huge thing we look for, and we ask kind of goofy culture questions on the interview as a hint if you ever apply. But if you can't work with the team, we do a lot of team-oriented things. When our bank's attacked or something, everybody has a job and they have to do it well and fast. And if you can't gel and work in that environment, then it becomes a challenge and an impediment for us to being successful in whatever we're trying to remediate. So, but yeah, everything else that David and Liz said are spot on as well.
So, you're in your conversation, something kind of popped into my mind, and that's you talked about passion and having an interest in doing the job. So, do you think that like if I'm let's say I'm a business major and I want to get into this, right? Um, do I have to have a passion for, Brian, let's say, for banking and finance, or can I just have a passion for cybersecurity? Does it translate between industries? What are your thoughts on that as a group?
But it's from my perspective, you don't have to be a banker necessarily. What's nice about information security in general is it translates to just about anything. I think the one distinction or delineation you probably should make is regulated environments versus non-regulated. Certain companies don't have the stringent controls around that, and I think that might be a differentiator as far as who we may or may not pick based off of familiarity with that. But all that's teachable and all that's learnable. And some of the best folks that we've hired were not computer science majors. They were curious and they could learn quickly and they could articulate complex things when they talked about it. And we taught them the rest. So I think, yes, it helps to, and if you're, I guess, what stage or level you're jumping in from a banking perspective may or may not win you the job. But I would argue that is familiarity with it and the ability to pick up on those is just as good and really probably a little better, because in those cases, you're not bringing any kind of biases to the organization. You're teachable, and you can learn the ways, a more general way, the way we want you to learn for our biases. But by and large, it makes it easier for you to be brought in and mentally in our mind, say, okay, I know this person will be good and effective within 3 weeks or a month or whatever, versus somebody I got to retrain for 6 months. So.
Yeah,
That makes sense. Go ahead.
Yeah,
I was
I
going
would
to say
say
Liz, go ahead, David.
at the entry level, an understanding of, quote, the business is not, as the skills themselves are fungible, right? The operating day-to-day skill of security are at the individual contributor level, at the entry are relatively fungible. As your career grows, right, you will build a specialty in the industry that you work in, right? So what are the, for a CISO, one of the things is, are you at the table? Are you in the business? Are you in technology? You have to understand the business drivers, the threats to the business, the risks to the business, the controls of the business, the regulatory of the business. So all that will grow in your career. And it is not unlikely that you get into an industry and stay in that industry for a good length of, I've been in the financial industry for most of my career. So it's not unlikely that you do that. But if at an entry level, I would say that the skills are perfectly fungible.
I place people across different industries every single day, right? And so you see people coming from healthcare, going to finance, again, because those are highly regulated types of environments. But at the end of the day, I find most of the clients I work for, they want not only diversity in the types of people that they're bringing into their teams, but diversity in the way that people think. So having come from an outside industry, it brings in a unique perspective into that team. And it goes back to, you just have to be somebody that does the research and knows how to be resourceful when you're coming into a new industry. Be willing to learn the culture of that different industry, and you'll find yourself just even making that effort as being successful, I think.
Great. So going in on not having hands-on experience, how should, let's say one of our students was looking, to get into cybersecurity, they're a student today. How about their home security and their cyber hygiene, like on social media and stuff? How important of a role does that play when you're interviewing or doing, background review of a potential candidate? Why don't we start with Brian on this one?
Well, two questions there. For the home network piece is naturally, the more you practice stuff, the more fluent you are in the conversation. So, and when I teach classes, I tell everybody that Kali Linux is your friend. It's a free distribution. You can install just about anything. Running virtual machines on your computer now is a piece of cake, and it's free through VirtualBox. So is Kali Linux, frankly. In the Mac world, you got to pay a little bit, which is the Parallels piece. Or the cloud is pretty nice now, where you can go to a place like Hack the Box to kind of work on your skills.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a free part of that too, but it's it's relatively affordable. I haven't been there in a while, to be honest with you. I'm trying to think what other avenues there that you can explore, but as far as social media is concerned, we do check out things. Our position is one of trust, and it's important to see how people carry themselves online. And part of our process is a background check to see how people do that, and social media does factor into that. So if people are out there and they're doing things that are somewhat questionable, I guess, for lack of a better word, then we have to weigh that option, because that could be an indication of future performance maybe, or something. But if you're out there spreading ideas in a positive way, that's positive too. I mean, being part of the conversation is really important. And in this day and age, social media is a really good amplifier of those thoughts. And we've hired a few people that have been really active in Twitter, for instance, in a really good way, and have great followings for that reinforce the message we're trying to do for our culture and our things at the bank.
The way I would look at it, it goes back to Liz's term passion. If you're new to the industry and you're saying you want to be involved in information security, but you haven't done any of that, it doesn't feel like you're that interested, right? So if somebody's applying to flight school, right, says I really want to be a pilot. Have you ever been on a plane? No. Ever visited an airport? Kind of no. Can you name 3 planes? 737? No, can't really do that. It doesn't feel like the guy's particularly interested in the realm. Understanding that it's the beginning, so you want to have enough activity. And I would question myself, if I did not have that activity and I was not that interested, why am I looking for this job, right? So you should question that yourself. If you have not done these, social things, whatever you want to call them, these extracurricular social things that are available, convince yourself you're interested in information security first, and then you'll be able to convince somebody else.
Absolutely. And security is very unique in that way. IT and security, it's not like they ask a lot of accountants, are you working the books for all your family, right? But in IT and security, they do want to know what you're doing at home. They want to know, have you built a LAMP stack? Are you a part of the open source community? Are you joining the conversations in LinkedIn groups? And it generates a network for you that you can leverage later on, as well as giving you the skill sets that you need. But But in addition to that, it differentiates you when you're looking, especially in the entry level, right? So you have a group of people that all have the same degrees. What you're looking for next is what certifications, who has what certifications, and who's doing what outside of the school to demonstrate that they're passionate and learning and, you know, creating sandboxes. You should know what your land looks like at home, you know. And I think those kinds of things are things that help separate you from the pack, really, and that'll help get you that job above somebody else who hasn't done those things.
And remember, there are, and we talk about some people who may not be, you know, quote IT people. There's a lot of non-technical portions of information security now.
Yes.
Right. So there's third-party risk management, right? Which is a you know, where you look at other companies and their programs in you know, to check their compliance. There's compliance in general. There's endless legal stacks of what information security and regulatory stacks. So a lot of this is not geek stuff. A lot of it is, and a lot of it is not geek stuff.
Yeah.
And information security has evolved from an IT function to its own outcome. And because of that, there is, you know, in this large umbrella called information security, there are, and I'll use it, there are still the firewall jockeys, right?
Yes.
There are still those guys, and it's still important that they do it, and it's still getting done. But if you go to an information security department now, that is just one stack within a broad range of skills.
Yeah, we tell people to flip through like cybersecurity framework or something to get a flavor of the, to David's point, that there's a lot of diversity in what you need to know or can do in the field, and a standard like that, it's a quick read on the summary pages, just to give you the headers of things to focus on from a career opportunity. And
Yeah.
he's right, it's not all technical stuff. It's resiliency. It's a big piece of our world, which is really policy driven and things like that. So it's lots of opportunities.
So we have a question from one of the members of the audience, Miguel, which also leads to what our next question was anyway. He's asking what certification should an entry-level person that wants to get into security have? And I know here at Seton Hall, you know, our undergraduates are given the opportunity to get a Sec Plus and a Net Plus certification from CompTIA. But there are hundreds of certifications out there. And obviously, every employer wants a CISSP, but you have to have at least 5 years of experience. So, you know, a recent graduate's not going to be, you know, walking in the door with one of those unless they happen to be, you know, a part-time student that's working full-time. So what kind of certifications would you be interested in seeing, you know, for somebody new into the career? David, you want to start that?
Well, first of all, I think those are good ones, right? For the technical guys, those are good ones. And I'll speak more broadly. Any broadly recognized certification shows interest. Now, there's two sets of certifications. There are industry certifications, and then there are technology certifications within a vendor, right? You can be certified in Cisco, something. You can be certified in Windows. You can be certified in different Red Hat. There's a whole bunch of different certifications. All of them are valuable for the entry level person because all of them show interest. And you know, I'm going to quote a colleague of mine who said, you know, when we hire people at the entry level, when you look at people, would make sure you learn in school what you're supposed to learn in school, right? So you know, a lot of companies, and I disagree with this, you know, say, well, they should come in. Yeah, everyone wants 3 years experience. Well, you're not going to get that experience in school, but there is a set of skills that you are going to attest to that you learned in school. Right? I went to school, I did, and it could be anything. It could be on the management side. And so anything that helps, other than the degree, anything that helps attest to your interest and your fluidity of you learned what you were supposed to learn in the learning phase of your career. Your career includes school, right? Your career begins kind of at the end of high school. So you have a learning, you're 100% learning when you're in college, right? And some people 80-20, they're working part-time or whatever, or 50-50. And then when you get into the working environment, it's maybe 80-20 the other way, right? Where you're working 80% of the time and you're going to school, whatever that means, right? Which could be conferences. You're learning maybe 20% of the time. If not, right? If not, you'll quickly be, you know, you'll quickly be out of date, right? So you got to look at that as a spectrum where it kind of goes from 80-20 in your 20s for most people, and I know people follow different career paths, but 80-20 in your 20 to maybe 20-80 in your 40s and 50s. But it's never 100% work, and it's never 100% school.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I mean, IT and security itself is so dynamic. It's constantly changing. New things are constantly coming out. There's always new tools, there's always new approaches, and there's always new, I mean, people were basically defending your company against, right? And while the certifications demonstrate a core knowledge base, I know this thing, right? This is what I'm good at. It's a differentiator on your resume. But in addition to that, it gives you an opportunity to figure out what you want to do, because it is such a broad industry that, maybe you're trying, maybe you do the network plus, and discover you hate networking. So you go the avenue of security. Maybe you're taking the Splunk certifications when you're getting closer to the vendor side and realize, I want to do Splunk the rest of my career. This is so much fun for me. And being able to kind of learn those with the certifications, it gives you a leg up, because there's so many avenues you can go. It can be a little overwhelming if you aren't willing to try things. And a lot of times finding a company that'll help you pay for and get those certifications in your early career, it's going to set you up for success and really help kind of guide you to where you need to go.
And reverse it. Think of the hiring person. Say you're just hiring an electrician for your house. 2 people show up.
Yep.
Both purport to be competent. Both have good references. One guy has a license. One guy doesn't have a license. I'm going to hire the licensed electrician, because the one thing I do know for certain is that he's got a license, right? I know that. So remember, because the interview process is quick. They don't know much about you. There's a decision they've got to make, and they're assessing all of this for a degree of confidence, right? It's not an exam. It's whether the hiring person has confidence in you that you will be successful. And that confidence is listen, the guy's got a certification, he's interested. And so I would focus on any legitimate certification that supports your assertion that you are interested and that you have passion for the job.
Yeah, I think that the CompTIA ones are a great place to start to kind of get that toehold. That you're hands down, David. Liz, you're absolutely right. I think those are great, and they give you a taste, to Liz's point, of what's possible. And for us, they do open the door, and I think we tend to bring folks in and maybe put you a little bit on the spot, but we always have a whiteboard and a marker there to talk about something. And if somebody says they have like a net plus, for instance, I said, well, draw me a network real quick. And there's been a couple times where the person wasn't nowhere near right, but what we're looking for though is thinking on your feet and thinking through stuff. And the logical process. So like Dave was talking about, learn what you can in school. School's about learning how to learn. So, and learn how to articulate. So when somebody would come in and not do so well on their network diagram, because they never done it before, they never built a gigantic network or anything, but the way we pay attention to how they articulate it, how they talk about it. And like Liz said, they're passionate about it. And Dave, if you know what kind of airplane you want to be in when you come in, and just talk, and that counts for a big deal. So the search may get you in the door, and like I agree with David. You don't hire an electrician without a license necessarily, but I think though it helps frame the conversation and helps us as decision makers figure out where you are on the spectrum of knowledge, and if you're excited to be there, like we said earlier. So I think it's CompTIA is a great place to start, and then your job will dictate the rest. Like when I started out, I was all technical, especially in security. So I used to have all the certs. I let them lapse. In Microsoft, name the firewall, I had that in. But my career took me to more leadership roles and managers. So I went to CISA and CSSP and the privacy ones for my SAC and such. So your path will dictate where you go from there, based off of where you're, like I think what Dave was saying, where you find yourself in your career. So
you mentioned the Splunk certifications and things like that, and I know we happen to be a Splunk customer, and they offer like free certifications and free tools. I'm guessing, based on the conversation, you're all suggesting that if the person really has interest, those are things that they should at least explore and see whether it's for them or not. They don't necessarily have to go through the certification route, but at least check out where it is.
Absolutely.
The way I would look at it is, if you have interest, you want to do it. You want to learn this stuff. And if you've learned this stuff, you might as well take the credit. And sometimes they'll charge $100, sometimes they won't, sometimes you got to sit there. But if you know it, right, then the test isn't hard, right? And none of this stuff is difficult for an interested person. All of these processes are set up for success, right? They're not set up so that you fail, right? So the CISSP, the CISA, they're set up that if you know the material, you're going to pass, and if you're interested, you'll know the material, right? There's not a lot of, and you can complain about any individual question, Brian, I know, but it's designed for success. It's the industry tool that builds success.
I think that the latch on something that Keith has said, once you're in, we pay for certifications. We pay for that training. So that's why we run through a lot of pre-testing if we can, because we're going to invest in you. You can ask anybody who works for me. I torture them. I ask them, are you going back for your master's? Are you doing a certification? Come on, let's do this. Let's do it. And I just beat them into submission, and they've all gone back and done all these things. But we want to invest in folks. We have a program at the bank where we'll pay for your masters. And there's a couple slots per year. We pay for 2 employees that go on the bank to go get your master's degree, for instance. So we once you're in, we'll based on your interest, your desire, and how excited you are about stuff, we'll help guide you to the right certifications that, selfishly, they're going to help us a bit, but there's a career plan that we lay out for everybody that says, hey, based off of what we're hearing from you, how you're performing, we think here's a path. Start taking these tests. Let's, start seeing if there's interest there. And I always tell everybody, fail fast. And it's like, try something out. It doesn't work. No problem. Just shift to something else. Just don't dwell on it. It's not for everybody. So if you're not, like a firewall jockey, as you said earlier, or you're a policy person, that they're not the same person typically. So find what you're excited about and
the CISO's got to be both. Is the problem?
Yes,
That's true.
Depending on the meeting, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the challenge for somebody young and starting out, is their career path. Being a CISO is not necessarily the end game for everyone, right? Some people prefer to be technical and stay technical, and other people don't. And if you're not technical and getting into a cybersecurity career, there are plenty of avenues, like law, policy, governance, all those kind of things. So I know we hadn't talked about this, but just kind of popped into my head. So in your organizations, do people who are non-technical still report to the CISO, or are they, would they be interviewing somewhere else? What are your thoughts on those kind of roles that are not non-technical security people?
So I would group it generally by just technical groups. There's the firewall guys and the vulnerability guys who are technical, and then there's a whole large area called what's generally called GRC, right, which is governance, risk, and controls, right? And that could be different areas depending on the organization. If governance could be a separate department from risk, and controls can be a separate. But that whole body of work that is called governance and risk is non-technical, large, getting larger exponentially, and is really the visibility into what the security department's doing, right? Nobody but maybe the CISO knows the firewall configurations, and and kind of nobody, and I'll say this carefully, nobody cares, right? That they're assuming that work is being done, right? That's the CISO. But the governance and risk area is where the rest of the organization meets the security team, right? Where every aspect of the organization, HR would be involved in that, legal's involved in that, the business, front office business is involved in that, audit's involved in that. So that whole body of work called GRC is large, getting larger, and is really what security is now visible to the rest of the firm.
Yeah, for me, I have 3 divisions that report to me. One of them is Bank Secrecy Act, which is more of a banking function. But I have, to David's point, I have a GRC division and I have engineering basically. So, and I will tell you that the GRC folks include things like privacy. It's a hot topic these days, and you have to focus somebody on. So there's a lot of opportunities to diversify in our own group. So Keith, to answer your question, I guess it's one-stop shopping. You'll get to me at some point, and sometimes what I do on the GRC side is I bring in some of the business folks, like our chief risk officer, who I report to, bring her in the conversation. I may bring in a business line or two. Just these are the folks you're going to interact with all the time, and get a read on that person and see if it makes sense or if there's any issues or questions. So. But yeah, it starts. We organize that whole effort internally at our bank because it's our focus. And David's right. It's all about alignment with those things. So yes, you can be hacking on a system or something, for lack of a better word, but it has to line up to. We use cybersecurity framework and a few others for compliance stuff. It all has to reconcile there so that when the regulators come in, it makes sense. We're doing the right things, and we're looking at the right threats coming down the line and all that good stuff. So, Liz, I don't know if you have any experience in that space.
No, none. So our firm it's a little bit different than your guys' companies, right? So Novacoast is an IT and security consulting firm. And so our entire organization is security, essentially. I mean, be them project managers, be it our pen testing team, our development team, our security team. We're all kind of in IT and security across the organization. And the advantage to that is, you maybe you came from an HR background, you start doing project management, start talking with those guys, and then you see a route, you see an avenue to go that direction. A lot of people who come into our help desk merge up into our SOC and then find their area of expertise by shadowing and working with some of our senior engineers. And that's how they end up launching out into their area of expertise. And maybe they're really nerdy about compliance. Maybe they love policy and practices. And, we've got a team that supports that as well. So in our company, basically the entire firm is IT. We're run by engineers and we're a company for engineers, essentially.
I know in one of a vendor that we worked with, one of our customer service representatives that we dealt with on a regular basis, she ended up working her way into the SOC, right? She was a marketing person with a marketing degree, but she got so curious about what she was hearing from her clients that she started looking more into cybersecurity, and the organization gave her a chance to become technical, and now she's a SOC analyst, which is an interesting career path. But I think it highlights that whole conversation that you guys just brought up. Just because you start out in one place doesn't mean you end up in that place. It's more based on your interest and your abilities and what your passion to do something is. So I think that's great for people to think about. So where should people be looking for jobs? I mean, obviously, there's the boards like Indeed and all that kind of stuff. But where does somebody starting out in this, an upcoming graduate or recent graduate, where do they go? Do they go just to Indeed? Do they go to career services at their school? But where else are you guys, looking for candidates or looking for, possibilities for them? Liz, do you want to start on that since you're in that role?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, yeah, you're right. Indeed, Dice, LinkedIn, these are all places we post jobs. Starting out in your career, it's good to get a couple of staffing agencies in your pocket because they're having those conversations with customers about, those entry-level positions and walking into those. And I'd also advise that the majority, so when my team posts an ad, we don't sit and wait for people to show up, especially with everything being remote now. It's a lot harder for people to find the diversity of jobs that are out there and available to you. So I always recommend and posting your job online as well. Get it posted on Indeed, on Dice, join the IT career groups and start getting some networking in using LinkedIn to create, meet people, meet mentors, do that networking. Because quite honestly, I mean, I'm looking all over the country when I have an opening, right? And you may not necessarily be looking all over the country when you're searching for a job. So having your resume out there and putting yourself out there is, I think, just as important as what types of positions you're searching for. Because I'm going to find you. I promise. Me or my team will find you. That's what we do exceptionally well. So that's my recommendation is don't be hard to find.
Brian, any thoughts on that?
I completely agree. We do the same thing, and I think we try to do like conversations like today. We go. I always talk. I think we shared about this when we were talking before about looking for draft picks. So I love going to the colleges and meeting people. I love seeing the conversations that occur because you kind of get a read on who's interested and who's not. But being present, like Liz said, being visible is so important, and it shows, like David said earlier, it shows interest and it shows there's a passion there, and I'm going to get to know that person. And I don't know if I'm as good as Liz at finding you, but but we try really hard though. It's I think that those forums, I mean, things like volunteer groups, like I'm a big proponent of InfraGard. I've been in InfraGard for as long, again, embarrassingly too long probably for this group, but I've made some great contacts through that, and they allow students in, and they allow people with the interest in there to kind of hear about and meet others. Any opportunity like that's really, really good because you get that FaceTime and you get it's a little casual too. It's not like a pressure where you're trying to get a job. You're talking with a peer about what your passion is. I'm sure we could have another whole call on this, and Dave, Liz, and I could have war stories for hours and talk about where we've been and all that. And that's kind of what you're looking for, because then that builds rapport, and I think that's really what you're trying to do. And people want to work with people that they align with in some capacity, and I think that really helps break the ice in those areas.
Let me just sidetrack for a second because I'm also an InfraGard member, and the New Jersey InfraGard has now just created an academic group of students, faculty, and staff from higher ed to kind of get ready to talk. So Brian, can you just explain what InfraGard is? Because I'm guessing a lot of people in our audience don't know what InfraGard is.
Sure. The InfraGard is a public-private alliance with the FBI to talk about attacks or potential threats to the critical infrastructures of the United States. So you name the infrastructures, there's 20 some on. I can't remember. I should know this because I used to do the spiel all the time when I was the president of the Philadelphia chapter for a little while. But what it is, it brings people together to kind of talk about those threats relative to a critical infrastructure and throw some ideas around in a kind of a circle of trust environment. So you do a little criminal background check on everybody to make sure you're not evil in some kind of way. But once you're in there, we're sharing ideas, we're talking about what we're seeing, and has anybody else seen that? It's a nice forum to kind of learn about what we can do to protect ourselves and protect the country ultimately, and then help our law enforcement partners figure out where the bad guys are and go after them. And it's been I can't tell enough good stories about it. I've been involved at all levels and in side projects as well. You can get involved in if you're there. I've met the last 3 directors of the FBI face to face, which has been great. I've had the opportunity to talk to foreign actors and how they can build an InfraGard program from Moldova in particular. So it's really interesting ultimately, but it's really great to be. You're in there, and again, you're around other people with like interests who want to learn and do really cool things. So Keith, I would highly recommend anybody here that, especially as in academic groups, get involved in that. And I think it's rewarding. Plus, you're giving back. You don't get paid for this, and you want to make the world a better place. This is a great opportunity to do that, and you're really making a difference, which is awesome too.
And I think the other thing about that, just so people know, membership is free. There's no cost to be a member, so it's definitely something.
Good point.
I agree with Brian, definitely. So as we have about 10 minutes left in our panel here, so as we start to wrap up, so what are your thoughts on overall advice and What are your concluding thoughts? So we'll start out with Liz again, since you started us off.
Sure. Well, at the end of the day, I think the best advice I can give is put yourself out there, get in the conversations, ask questions. IT people love answering questions. They love training. They love having those discussions and troubleshooting with you. So don't be afraid to get out there and do that. Take risks, try different things, try different avenues, and find out what you're good at, what you're passionate about, and then explore those opportunities further. I think at the end of the day, passion, creativity, resourcefulness, like I said in the beginning, these are the kinds of things that are going to carry you through knowing how to find things. And quite honestly, it helps to have a mentor in that process if you can find one, somebody that'll take you under their wing and show you what they've already learned so you can learn from their mistakes. And I mean, at the end of it, if anybody has any questions, find me on LinkedIn, Liz Cowell. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have in your career search and help you along the way. And I'm sure these guys are as well.
So you mentioned Liz, mentor. So that's always an important part for, I think, for everyone, especially when you're starting out. LinkedIn is great if you can find people who are willing to be mentors. Like, you mentioned yourself. Same for me. I'm on LinkedIn. You can, any of our students are welcome to reach out and connect with me. And obviously, if you're a Seton Hall student, you can find me in the email directory and just shoot me an email. Where else would you suggest looking for mentors beside, LinkedIn? I mean, InfraGard is a great place because it's in person. But any other thoughts on where to look for mentors?
Look at your local IT groups. Every locale that I've seen has security groups, meetups, has IT groups and meetups. I think that's a good way. Go to the open source communities, and you can start meeting people that way, doing projects with them. It's a good way to get your hand in. That's my perspective. Maybe David and Brian have alternatives or other places you can look.
Yeah, anything physical is great. Anything, if there's a meetup that, anything physical is amplified over the online experience, right? Because people like to work with people they know. And I've had times in my career where I've been looking for a job, even not including the beginning of it, right? And the term I would use with my wife is I need to inject some energy into the process, right? That's what I do. I'm going to inject energy into the process. I'm going to make some calls. I'm going to send some resumes. I'm going to call people like Liz, and you just inject the energy into the process. And some of it, not all of it, will be echoed back, but there'll be a reflection, right, of that energy that you project into the process. So anybody that's in the industry, reach out to them. There is nothing wrong or embarrassing about saying I am looking for a job. You can be as clear and direct about that. Doesn't mean you're asking them for a job necessarily, but I am looking for a job. I need some help. Right? There is nothing wrong with that set of words, right? Why? Because you're looking for a job and you need some help, right? So that's why there's nothing wrong with that. So I would just be as open, I'd be as transparent, and I would be as affable as I could be through the whole process. And it's frustrating sometimes, but it is looking for a job is a function of energy you project into it. It's purely an effort-based outcome, and then
100%.
Right. One thing you do not know is where your next job is coming from, including your first, right? The one thing you don't know is where it's going to come from. It will come from somewhere. So the more somewheres you have, the better off you are.
What other thoughts do you have as you conclude, David? Anything else?
I would say, and we talked about what I call technical skills. When I say technical skills, I include like GRC, I include that skill set that you have is necessary, but not sufficient to be successful. So first, you want to be very, very good at your skill, whatever that skill is. You want to be very good at it. You do not have to be the best. You just need to be very good. And then what's interesting is you see somebody who is good at a job. Say they're a Windows, I call my favorite guy firewall jockey. He's a firewall jockey, and he's great at a company. And he moves to another company. He's great. He's a high performer, but he moves to another company as in the same job, and now he's a dismal failure. Right? It's the same job. right? Either way, he's configuring firewalls, he's closing ports, he's opening ports, he's doing those things. But one way, he's unhappy, his job performance is low. So what's the difference? The difference is the culture. The firewall is the same firewall, the keyboard is the same keyboard, right? The only difference is the people. And that's really the key to success. Be good at that keyboard, whatever that keyboard is, be very good at that. But be aware that that is, again, necessary but not sufficient to be successful.
And Brian, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'd go back to where we started. I think the being curious and having that passion, it really translates. And I think, everything Liz and David said, I completely agree with. I think those are awesome points. But keep it simple too. I mean, I think the best folks that I've met in my career are the ones that I think a good friend of mine is a poli-sci major, and now I reserve the right to make fun of him because he's not a computer science guy, and I always say, well, if you did computer science, you would understand that, whatever. But this guy is sharp as a tack, and I would put him up against any computer science guy going. But he's so curious about things. He pushes me to be better too, which is kind of cool. And maybe that's a good opportunity too, is find people to make you better by pushing you a little bit. And I always talk about you don't get better playing against the B or C team. Find somebody who's the A team. Even if you don't match up, like Dave was saying, you're gonna learn. And learning is really key here, and how fast you assimilate that knowledge and carry it to the next conversation is so important. But you don't get there unless you're curious. You put some energy into it, like everybody's saying. Those are all great points. Don't give up. I mean, if you do, you can reach out to me as well. I will caution you because I get a ton of emails, and they're most of them are from people that are not good. So I tend to filter a lot. So if you send me a message, don't lose heart in that, or go through Keith or somebody, or go through Davis. Go through a source that we've known, because I got trust issues there for some
But
folks.
you're in security, you have to have trust.
I can't. Yeah, I got people. My phone's ringing now I don't know who's calling me right this minute because I know who it is. But be curious and put yourself out there. I think it's a great field. And I've been fortunate to meet folks like on this call today, and really enjoyed the journey so far. It's great. I'm happy to help if we can connect.
And I think, as we've talked and you mentioned things, the one thing that kind of jumped into mind is, networking and getting to know people in the industry is very important. And I think a lot of us have lost that, during the pandemic when we were all remote. And I went to a higher ed conference back in March, and it was the first in-person conference that we've had for a while. And that was everybody's feedback. It was just great to be with people, peers. I mean, and we weren't all cybersecurity people, but we were all higher ed people. And I think that's the thing for people getting in the career. Try to find these meetups and things to get out there and get your face out there so people know you and show your interest. And then also you can add those things to your resume or whatever. And and if you get an opportunity to speak or something, take it, because I know that's a big one, especially in higher ed. They're always looking for where have you spoken, where you published. I'd like to thank everybody again for participating. David Berger from SDG Corporation, Brian Schaeffer from OceanFirst Bank, and Liz Cowell from Novacoast. Thank you for your time and your wisdom that you parted with all of our students and attendees.
Take care. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.